Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fifth in our series in design. Today's workshop will be around iteration and refinement. Thank you very much for joining us on this sometimes sunny, sometimes cloudy afternoon in Belfast. My name's Nick Bridgepole. I work for the Belfast Met. Carlos Latcham will be your presenter today. Carlos, I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers, Nick. Thanks very much. And as Nick said, welcome everyone again to the fifth of six in the Belfast Met Design Workshop webinar series, An Introduction to Design Thinking. And for anyone that needs to get in touch for more details on how Belfast Met can support your business, just email us at businessdevelopment@belfastmet.ac.uk or at e3_BelfastMet on Twitter. Again, let me introduce myself. My name is Carlos Latcham. I've been involved with many aspects of product development for over 20 years. I've been an engineer and a designer in the aerospace, the automotive, the medical, consumer product, and heavy equipment industries. I've headed design teams, as well as just being a cog in the development process in companies, both large and small. I've managed projects from a few £100 up to over £1 million. Regardless of the size of the project, I always find the process of problem solving very satisfying, and I get a great feeling when I see people benefiting from the products I help to create. I'm currently a design consultant with Belfast Met, as well as running my own product development consultancy, Dark Red Design, based in Belfast. I would like to thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please put them into the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end if I can. So without further ado, let's get into it. So in the first webinar, we looked at an overview of design thinking and how a human-centered approach when creating solutions will meet the needs of users. It also encourages individuals and teams to think creatively, work collaboratively, and be open to feedback and iteration. In the second webinar, we looked at tools for empathizing with users, understanding the user's needs, their wants, and their objectives by observing and engaging with them on a psychological and emotional level. In the third webinar, we discussed how product definition is a critical stage in the design thinking process that lays the foundation for the rest of the design and development process. And the ideation phase is an important follow-on part of the design thinking process, as it's when a team generates a large number of ideas to solve a specific problem or challenge. In the fourth webinar, we covered that a prototype is an early version or model of a product design or concept that is created to test and validate ideas, test and validate features, their functionality and usability before you invest time and money into actually developing the product. And we also learned that user testing is the process of evaluating a product or service by gathering feedback and insights from those users who are representative of that target audience. In this, the fifth of our 6 webinar series, we're going to look at the iterative process. The iterative process, also known as iterative design or iterative development, refers to a cyclical and incremental approach to product development or problem solving. It involves repeatedly refining and improving a product or solution through a series of iterations, each followed by feedback, evaluation, and adjustments based on those results obtained. The iterative process typically involves the following steps: design or development, and this involves creating an initial version or prototype of your product or your solution, and it's all based on a set of requirements or specifications. Then you have the testing or the evaluation step. This is where you subject your prototype to testing or evaluation by real users or by stakeholders, all in order to gather feedback and also identify any issues and assess the performance. Then you move on to the analysis stage. Now, this is when you analyze the feedback and your data collected from the testing or evaluation to identify all areas of improvement, such as usability issues, bugs, maybe design flaws, things you weren't expecting. Then we move on to the refine. So it's time to make those necessary adjustments or refinements to your product or your solution based on the analysis of your feedback and the data that you've collected, including modifying, say, the design elements, maybe fixing issues or having to add new features. Then you repeat the process by creating an updated version of your product or solution, and then subject that to further testing, further evaluation, and further refinement. This cycle of design, test, analyze, and adjust is repeated multiple times until the desired level of quality, the desired level of functionality, or the usability that you need is achieved. So you may be wondering how this relates to the previous image of the design thinking process that you've seen. Well, this doesn't look as neat, does it? So if you remember, after you've completed your testing, then you analyze. It's the result of this analysis that leads you to the area where refinement needs to occur. So if you've tested through your analysis, you need to refine your definition, then you'll move to that define phase and you'll make that iteration there. If your analysis leads you back to the ideation phase, your ideas weren't correct, then that's where you go and you refine. The process that returns you to the test stage is collectively referred to as design in the iterative process. So, are there any alternatives to the iterative process? Here we have the waterfall process, or the waterfall model. It's a linear and sequential approach to product development, where each phase of the development process is completed before you move on to the next one. It's called the waterfall because the progress flows from one phase to another in a downward direction, like a waterfall. The waterfall process typically consists of the following phases. So there's the requirements gathering. At the outset, you go about gathering and documenting the project requirements from stakeholders. Then you design it, creating the design of the product based on the gathered requirements. Then you move on to your develop or implementation phase, where the building of the product based on the design is completed. Then you go on to testing. So you conduct testing to identify and fix any defects or issues. Then you move on to the deployment, where you deploy the product to your production environment. And then finally, the maintenance phase. And this is where changes manifests as ongoing maintenance and support of the product after deployment. Each of these phases are typically completed in a sequential manner, with the output of one phase becoming the input for the next phase. Once a phase is completed, it's not revisited, and any changes or updates are typically addressed in later phases. The waterfall process is often used in projects with well-defined requirements and stable scope, where changes, are minimal during the development process. It provides a clear and linear approach to development with a focus on detailed planning and documentation. However, one of the main drawbacks of this waterfall process is that it can be inflexible. When changes are required during the development process, as going back to the previous phases can be time-consuming and very costly. This may also result in delayed feedback and also potential issues being identified later in the process, which can be more difficult and expensive to fix. In contrast, iterative and agile approaches, such as the iterative process, they emphasize flexibility. It also emphasizes adaptability and a feedback-driven development process. The iterative process and the waterfall process are two different approaches to product development. So here we're going to go over some key differences between the two. If we look at the comparative approach, the iterative process is an incremental and cyclic approach where development cycles are repeated and each cycle builds upon the previous one. Feedback is actively sought from users and stakeholders throughout the process, and changes can be made at each iteration. On the other hand, if you look at the waterfall process, it's a linear and sequential approach where each stage is completed before moving on to the next one, with minimal opportunities for changes once a stage is completed. Then there's the flexibility between the two. The iterative process is highly flexible and allows for changes to be made at any stage based on feedback and all new information. This allows for quick adaptations and quick improvements based on real-world testing and feedback from a user group. In contrast, the waterfall process is a lot less flexible and changes are more difficult and costly to implement once a stage is completed. And if we compare the feedback loops between the two, the iterative process emphasizes a continuous feedback loop with users and stakeholders. This allows for frequent evaluation and frequent validation of your product, their features, and also their functionality. This helps to identify issues early and enables continuous improvements. In the waterfall process, feedback is typically gathered only at the end of the project, which may result in late-stage changes or rework if issues are identified. Then there's the risk management. The iterative process is inherently designed to manage risk proactively through early and frequent testing, feedback, and refinements. This reduces the likelihood of major issues emerging later on in the project. And again, the waterfall process, in contrast, may result in higher risk exposure as issues may not be identified until later stages. And later stages are when changes are more challenging to implement. And then we have time and cost. The iterative process may require more time and effort upfront to develop and test your prototypes, gather that essential feedback, and make iterative improvements. However, this can result in shorter development cycles, faster time to market, and potentially lower the cost due to early issue identification and mitigation. The waterfall process may have shorter upfront planning time, but may lead to longer development cycles and also higher costs if issues are not identified, or are identified later in the process. So you may be wondering, well, who would use the waterfall process? Well, an example of product developed using the waterfall approach is the space shuttle. And this was the reusable spacecraft used by NASA for space missions. The space shuttle program was launched in the 1970s, and eventually it was retired in 2011. Another alternative to the iterative process is the incremental process. The incremental process in product development refers to a step-by-step approach where a product is improved or it's extended iteratively through a series of small incremental changes or updates. It involves making gradual modifications or additions to an existing product to enhance its features, enhance its performance, maybe its quality or the user experience. And this process typically involves multiple rounds of testing, feedback, and refinement to continuously refine and optimize that product. Incremental development and iterative development are related concepts, but they have some differences. Firstly, in the approach. So, incremental development is an approach where a product is developed in small, manageable increments or pieces, with each increment being a functional subset of the overall product. Each increment is developed and delivered separately, and new increments are built upon previous increments. In contrast, the iterative development is an approach where development cycles are repeated, with each cycle involving a full or partial product development, testing, then the feedback loop. The changes and improvements are made based on the feedback that you receive from each iteration. And if we look at that feedback loop, both incremental and iterative development involve gathering feedback and incorporating it into the product development process. However, in the incremental development, feedback is typically collected at the end of each increment, and changes are made in the next increment. In iterative development, feedback is collected at the end of each iteration, and changes are made in subsequent iterations. This means that in incremental development, changes are made in larger increments, whereas in iterative development, changes can be made in smaller iterations. Then we have the product delivery. In incremental development, each increment is potentially shippable and can be delivered to users or customers as a functional subset of the overall product. This allows for early value delivery and customer feedback. And in contrast, in iterative development, the product may not be shippable after each iteration, as it may involve partial development and testing of the various features. However, the product is refined and improved with each iteration based on that feedback. And then that brings us to risk management. Both incremental and iterative development can help manage risks by allowing for early feedback and improvements. However, in your incremental development, risks are managed by developing and delivering functional subsets of the product in increments, reducing the risk of a full product failure. And in contrast, iterative development risks are managed through multiple iterations, where feedback and refinements are made at each iteration, reducing the risk of issues emerging later in the development process. And finally, we have flexibility for change. Both incremental and iterative development provide flexibility for incorporating changes based on feedback and market demands. However, in incremental development may provide less flexibility in terms of incorporating directional changes, as each increment is highly determinant of the previous increment. In contrast, we have the iterative development, which can involve greater iterative changes. So, now we're going to look at the two processes in comparison using the Mona Lisa as a subject. In the iterative process, we have an idea of our end goal, but not of exactly what it will look like. So we know that we want a woman in a pastoral setting. Right? That's just a broad overview of what we need to achieve. Now, if we compare that with the incremental process, we start off with a vision of what the end product will look like. In the iterative process, we approach it by producing first a rough sketch of our overall product before getting feedback. So we can get feedback on the pose, the length of hair, for example, but little is set in stone. The hair color, for instance, can still be determined, her eye color, complexion, all of these details are still yet to be decided. And through the iterative process, we gradually create our end painting, obtaining feedback at each stage. Whereby in the incremental process, we create a complete subset of our end product. As you can see here, the top third is completed prior to feedback being sought. And here we can see that this subset of the product is more or less set in stone. We know eye color, we know her hair color, we already know her complexion and expression. We've already got part of the background. Feedback will then determine the middle third, which again is another subset of the final product. And then again, feedback will be sought prior to completing the final third, which may help determine what the subject is doing with their hands, say. So as I highlighted previously, you could, for all intents and purposes, deliver the first part of the painting as just a headshot. The second increment could also be a deliverable product prior to the final whole painting being the final build. The iterative process allows for continuous improvement and evolution of the product or solutions based on real-world feedback and data, rather than relying solely on the assumptions or your predictions. It promotes a flexible and adaptable approach to product development, enabling designers and your design teams to respond to changing requirements, changes to user needs, or even market conditions. This iterative approach is used in software development, product design, user experience design, and many other areas where continuous improvement and refinement are crucial for success. And now we're going to remind ourselves how using an iterative process in product development or problem solving has several benefits. We have a continuous improvement, where the iterative process allows for ongoing improvement of a product or a solution through a cyclical feedback loop. Each iteration provides an opportunity to gather feedback, learn from user experiences, and make adjustments or refinements accordingly. And this helps ensure that the product or solution becomes increasingly refined, effective, and aligned with user needs and expectations over time. The iterative process enables teams to be flexible and adaptable in response to changing requirements, changes to user feedback, and changes to market conditions. It allows for adjustments and refinements to be made based on real-world data and feedback, which can help mitigate risks and address the issues as they arise, rather than waiting until the end of the development process to make changes. The iterative process allows for the development of an initial version or prototype of the product or solution to be released earlier, which can lead to a faster time to market. This early release allows for early user feedback, which can inform subsequent iterations and help identify and address potential issues or shortcomings sooner. And the iterative process in product development through early issue identification and resolution helps to reduce costs and risks. It enables incremental improvements and adjustments. Let's not confuse that with the incremental process. And this avoids costly fixes post-full product development. Incorporating feedback and iterating on the design early can identify and rectify issues before they become costly problems later. For instance, identifying usability issues or say your design flaws in the early design stages. This allows for quick course correction and avoids expensive rework or redesign efforts in the future. And this approach also minimizes the risk of developing a design that falls short of desired outcomes, which can waste time or resources. By proactively incorporating feedback and making necessary adjustments throughout the design process, you can establish a more efficient and effective workflow, and this results in time, effort, and resource savings in the design development. And the iterative process is centered around users, and this incorporates their continuous feedback and evaluation. This ensures that the product or solution is designed and refined based on actual user needs, their actual preferences, and their feedback. By aligning the design with the user expectations, it increases the likelihood of user adoption and acceptance. User experience plays a crucial role in the success of any design, be it a website, product, or software application. By actively seeking feedback from users and other stakeholders, designers can identify areas of design that may be confusing, cumbersome, or frustrating to use. This feedback allows you or any other designer to make informed decisions on how to improve the design to better meet the needs and expectations of your target audience. And this may involve adjustments to your layout, navigation, interaction design in, say, website, or other elements of design, with the ultimate goal of creating a more intuitive, efficient, and enjoyable user experience. Incorporating feedback is a collaborative process that involves listening to different perspectives and incorporating diverse ideas. The iterative process encourages innovation and creativity, as it provides opportunities for team members, opportunities for stakeholders and the other users to provide input, to share their insights, and also to offer suggestions for improvement. And all this encourages experimentation, encourages exploration and learning. It allows for trying out different ideas, different designs, different approaches, and then going on to learn from those results. And this is what leads to new insights and breakthroughs and improvements in the product or solution, and that reflect the needs and expectations of your target audience and stakeholders. And the iterative process includes ongoing testing, evaluation, and refinement. And this helps ensure that the product or solution meets the desired level of quality and performance. So by addressing those issues early and continuously monitoring and improving that product, the iterative process can result in a higher quality and a more reliable end product. Design is often created with specific business objectives in mind, such as increasing conversions, improving customer engagement, maybe enhancing your brand perception. But incorporating feedback from stakeholders, including the business owners, including the marketing teams, and including the sales teams, can provide insights into how well the design aligns with these business objectives. Feedback from these stakeholders can reveal whether the design is effectively communicating the intended message, capturing the target audience's attention, or driving the desired actions. By actively seeking and incorporating feedback, you can make adjustments to your design to ensure that it aligns with the overall business strategy and achieves the intended goals. Iterating on the design and incorporating feedback is a critical process in any creative endeavor, whether it's designing a product, whether it's building a website, whether you're creating a piece of art, or developing a software application. It involves continually refining and improving the design based on feedback from stakeholders, users, and any other applicable sources. There are several methods that designers can use to evaluate and refine a design. And some of the common methods include usability testing, which we've touched on before. And this involves observing real users as they interact with the design to identify any usability issues, identify any challenges or areas of improvement. And this can be done through various techniques such as moderated or unmoderated testing, in person or remote testing, and using prototypes or live products. Usability testing allows you to gather feedback on how well the design meets the needs of the users. Also, for you to identify any pain points or any frustrations these users may have, and then go on to make informed decisions on how to refine the design to enhance usability. Then you can also use expert review, also known as heuristic evaluation. And this involves having experienced designers or usability experts evaluate your design against a set of predefined usability principles or heuristics. These heuristics may include criteria such as consistency, error prevention, user control, feedback, and other principles that are known to contribute to a positive user experience. Expert review can help identify potential design flaws or issues that may impact the usability and provide recommendations for you to go on and refine your product further. Then as we touched on earlier, gathering feedback from your stakeholders, including your clients, including your team members, and any other relevant parties, again, as we touched on, say, marketing. And this can provide valuable insights into the strengths and weaknesses of a design. Stakeholders can provide feedback based on their unique perspectives, business objectives, and their domain expertise. Feedback can be collected through various means, such as meetings, you have surveys, you can have feedback forms, and all these can be used to inform your design decisions and guide your refinements. And there's the A/B testing, which we've come across in our previous webinar, also known as split testing, and this involves testing multiple versions of a design or features with real users to compare their performance and effectiveness. This can be done randomly, assigning users to different variations of your design, and then go on to measure your key metrics, such as your conversion rates, engagement, or any other relevant outcome that you deem is required. This A/B testing allows you to gather data-driven insights and make data-informed decisions in which design or feature performs better and should be then refined or adopted. You could use the cognitive walkthrough, which is a method that involves imagining and simulating how users would interact with the design, identifying potential usability issues or challenges, and this method can help identify potential problems to navigation, information architecture, interaction design, and anything else you can think of that you need to identify. It involves a step-by-step evaluation of the design from the user's perspective and can provide a valuable insight for you to go on to refine your design. Then you analyze that data from user interactions, such as, say, if you're designing a website, you have website analytics, heat maps, or user behavior tracking. All of this can provide insights into how users are actually engaging with your design. This data that you're analyzing, you're looking for it to reveal patterns, trends, areas of improvement, and inform design refinements accordingly. And these are just a few of the many methods that you can use to evaluate and refine your design. The choice of methods will depend on the specific context, specific goals, and resources available. And it's often beneficial to use a combination of the methods to gather comprehensive feedback and insights for effective design refinement. Now, how about we have a little exercise about what we just covered? Quick question. I'd like you to pop your answer into the chat, A, B, C, or D. What is the main goal of the iterative design process? A, to create a perfect design in the first attempt. B, to achieve the fastest possible design turnaround time. C, to continuously improve and refine the design through feedback and testing. Or D, to complete the design as quickly as possible. I'll give you a few seconds to pop your responses into the chat. Excellent, excellent. Okay, I see everyone's going for C. And you're all correct. Well done, well done. Everybody's been paying attention. Okay, let's have another one. What is the primary benefit of using an iterative approach in product design? lower costs, A. B, faster time to market, C, higher quality design, or D, reduced need for user feedback. What is the primary benefit using an iterative approach in product design? Give you a couple of seconds. I'll think about that. Primary benefit. Okay, you can still hear me. Okay. A, lower costs. B, faster time to market. C, higher quality design. Or D, reduced need for user feedback. What is the primary benefit of using an iterative approach in product design? Okay, I'll slow it down a bit. Primary benefit of using an iterative approach. A, lower costs. B, faster time to market. C, a higher quality design. Okay, we'll leave it. Okay, let's see. It's actually C, higher quality design. So this was a bit of a trick question. What is the primary benefit? The primary benefit is a higher quality design. Yes, secondary benefits are possible, faster time to market, and possible lower costs. But our primary benefit is trying to achieve a higher quality design. Well done. Okay. What is the purpose of prototyping in the iterative design process? A, to create a final product. B, to test the product with end users. C, to estimate the cost of production. Or D, to document the design process. I'll repeat. What is the purpose of prototyping in the iterative design process? A, to create a final product. B, to test the product with end users. C, to estimate the cost of production. Or D, to document the design process. Thanks, Chioma, for typing that out into the chat. Okay, we seem to be going for B. Everyone seems to be going for B. Practicing your typing speed. Yeah, well, it's pretty quick. And yep, everybody, well done. Well done. So now let's move on to the Q&A. If you have any questions, please pop it into the chat. Oh, I've got some question. I've got a question from Nick. Don't make it too hard.
Sorry, Carlos. I was looking for the applause button and accidentally raised my hand instead.
Okay.
Carlos, we have a question.
Yeah.
Do you see that from
yeah. In what situations does the incremental process help? Well, that's an interesting one. It depends. The incremental process helps if you have a predefined product in mind and you want to get it straight to market, straight away. You can say you had a competitor who's put a product out onto the market. And quite often you will find that Me Too products are done using incremental process. So your competitor has done all this work. He's gone through iterative process. He has done the heavy lifting and has created a product and put it out into the market. And you, as a rival company, needs to get a product onto the market to also gain some sales. If you were to do that process, you are way behind. You are way, way behind. And in order for you to capture some sales, what you'll do is you will look. Remember, if you look at the picture I showed of the Mona Lisa, you imagine that you've pictured your rival's product and you go, oh, that's flying off the shelves. I need to get a product onto the market straight away. Your design team will be said, look, there you go. I want one of those. And you'll probably quickly look at the different versions of IP that they have. What can you do to make your own product? You probably would add your own branding, your labeling, your colors, whatever to differentiate your product from the competitor's product. And that is how you will get your product to market using that iterative process. You will just put something on the market, and that market will then determine what you do next. So say you maybe capture, I don't know, maybe say your competitor's out there, he's sopping up the market, you go out there and you capture 10% of the sales. 10% is better than no sales. You go out there, your product goes out there, and then you can get feedback on your product that's out on the market. And your customers will say, well, the competitor has X feature and you don't have it. Say, for instance, you couldn't find a way to get around a bit of certain IP to have that feature. So you've just, you've left that feature out. Now you've got a bit of time. You can go, your design team can, put their brains together, iterate, find a different feature, say, by using a bit of feedback that may replace that and encourage your customers to want to buy that product. So that is where the incremental process helps, is when your competitor, you're behind, you've dropped the ball, and you need to get something onto the market. Yes, somebody made the comment of a parasite, but that is business. That is how business works in the design industry.
Carlos, I think it might be worthwhile at this point just to jump in and talk a little bit about what you do for the Belfast Met for guests. So Carlos is a consultant with the Belfast Met, where he provides project-based mentoring to companies under 50 employees. So if any of you are a company under 50 employees within Northern Ireland looking to develop a new product, a new process, new service, do get in touch. I'll drop my email into the chat as well, and we can have an open discussion with Carlos in terms of how we can help with your design process. Sorry, Carlos, I just thought I'd jump in there and do
No,
my
that's
pitch.
fine. That's fine. Oh, go for it. Go for it. We're always happy to see people come along, and if you require any help. Yeah, so Nick has just popped his email into the chat. So if you work for any companies and you need some help in your design process, give him a shout. So have we got any other questions? If not, no. Is it possible to have a waterfall within the iterative process? I'm not too sure. I wouldn't say yes, you could. Because the two processes are fundamentally different, because the iterative process sort of suggests that cycling, whereby the waterfall process isn't cyclical. Okay, e.g. in the digital environment where developers wait on designs. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure whether that is possible. Because maybe is it a suggestion that each iteration then is a waterfall? For instance, if we look at the example of the space shuttle there, it was designed with a specific task in mind. There were some concepts at the stage, but the process of the development of the space shuttle was they designed it, they tested it, and then once they developed it, it went off, did whatever it needed to do, and then when it came back, any problems, they would develop it again. That's the maintenance phase. So I'm not 100% sure if that's what you mean, if it's possible to do that, and then come back and then you create another space shuttle. No, I'm not 100% sure that's possible. Have you ever experienced a project which goes through too many iterations? Any thoughts on knowing when to stop? Yes. That can happen quite often. You need to draw a line in the sand, because nothing is going to be perfect first time or whatever. You can always improve. You can always improve, no matter what you do, no matter what you create as a designer. You're not going to have all the answers at some point, but you need to draw a line in the sand. So that's why you need to define what it is you're trying to achieve at the outset, and then you iterate to achieve that. Now, I don't know if you're maybe suggesting that you haven't achieved it through your iterations, because then there is something could be fundamentally wrong. Maybe your definition was just too advanced for your capabilities or the technology. But these are the things that you should have taken into account when you defined what you're doing. You can have experimentation, but you need to know what you're going to achieve from your experimentation. You do your experiment, see what you find out, and whatever you get is what you work with, and then you do your iterative process. Yeah, too many iterations, that's just somebody wanting to achieve perfection and not willing to, yeah, let the market decide at some point. I hope that answered that question. Not 100 how it going up. Well, quite in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, a lot of the pioneers of the aerospace industry all took their lives in their own hands, really. Not many people. Well, that's not true. Some people did not make it back after the early iterations of various aircraft and spacecraft. So yeah, you need to be a bit gung ho back in those times. Now we have all the health and safety that needs to happen, and we have crash test dummies and stuff like that. Whereby back then, yeah, it was strap yourself in. The crash test dummies were real people that put themselves on the line. So too many iterations sounds like my personal life. Well, I think that's what we're all doing. We all do that. We all iterate as we move through life, and that's what life is about. Making changes, learning, improving yourself, and doing better next time around. And same in business, same with products. We're all a product of our environment, so that's what we're doing.
Who would have thought a design workshop would turn into a meditation on life, Carlos? That's very insightful.
Yes, yeah, yes, all works in progress. It certainly is. Certainly is. Life is design. That's why we're all here. We're all iterations of what we were before. We're iterations of our parents, and our children will be iterations of us. So, that's yeah. That
fantastic.
Is. Oh, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Look, if there is no more questions, I think we could go on forever now that we're delving into the questions around life in general. That will be Carlos's 6th workshop, the design of life and life as design. Thank you all very much, and have a fantastic day. Thank you. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.